If you love the idea of a reading journal, but a DIY setup sounds like a lot of work, a pre-printed reading journal might be for you. I'm taking an in-depth look at the Quirky Cup Collective's pre-printed reading journal to see what kind of tracking options it offers, how it guides you through the book reviewing process, and whether or not I think it's worth your money. I'm even going to test it out so you can see how it works in action. Hi, I'm Erin, and I personally prefer to keep my own DIY reading journal in a dot grid notebook, but I love checking out other options and putting them to the test so you can find out if they'd be a good fit for you. I purchased this reading journal with my own money, and this review is not sponsored or endorsed by the Quirky Cup Collective in any way. The Quirky Cup Collective's reading journal is A5 sized, and it comes in a range of cover options. I picked the Wisteria journal because I liked its cover the most, but the range is pretty broad. I believe the pages inside are the same, it's only the cover that differs, with the exception of their reading companion notebook, which I don't have and I haven't tested, so let me know if you want to see a video about the companion. Given that they're based in Australia, the prices for the reading journals are in Australian dollars. I'm also Australian, so that works great for me, but if you're further afield, you might find that Australian $59.99 plus shipping costs a little bit more for you than it does for me. Having been keeping my own reading journals for over 2 years, I have a pretty good idea of what I like in a reading journal, so let's see how this one compares, starting with a full flip through of the journal. These will be my first impressions because all I've done so far is take the plastic off. From the front of the cardboard sleeve, which we'll remove in a second, we've got 120 GSM paper inside. It is a dateless reading tracker with 217 quick reviews and 41 full reviews. TBR and new releases list, reading challenge entries, dateless yearly reading stats and book awards, bookshelf tracker, library card, blank spaces for creativity, plus more. And there's a little blurb on the back that's a little bit about why this reading journal exists, notably opening with fellow book lovers. I do know from following the Quirky Cup Collective on Instagram that Sidonie is an avid reader herself, which gives me really high hopes for this little beauty. And she is a beauty. Let's take off the sleeve so that we can see. That is a really lovely cover. I do love that it looks like a vintage fairy tale. This is the Wisteria version. It does also come in different colors. I don't usually love when a notebook has its purpose on the front of it like this, but because this is pre-printed, I think I'm alright with it saying reading journal. I don't know if I'm totally sold on the font. I don't love it, but I don't hate it, but the rest of it I think is beautiful. And I know she does have journals available in this design without the reading journal text in the middle in case you like a blank notebook. On the back it says here, we lose ourselves in the books we read, but we find ourselves there too, which I love, and a little quirky logo here. Truly spectacular. I love the spine. It does say Reading Journal Volume 3 down here on the spine, and I don't know if I love that, because if it's not your third volume, then I mean, maybe that's a production thing. It's her third volume of the reading journal. I'm not sure, but that would confuse me if it wasn't my third reading journal. Do you know what I mean? Also worth mentioning, we've got gold gilded page edges. They look beautiful, and because this is a pre-printed reading journal, I would guess that you wouldn't be sticking too much stuff in here besides maybe book covers, so that probably wouldn't get too ruined in the process of using this baby. We're gonna take a tour first, and then I'll put it through its paces and actually try using some of this journal to see what I think. Beautiful end sheets. If you don't love a sharp corner on your journal, something to keep in mind, this one does not have rounded corners on the pages. It's not a deal breaker for me, but I prefer a rounded corner. Table of contents. The first several appear to be pre-printed things in the book, and then from page 59 onwards appears to be choose your own adventure. And they are numbered pages too, that's good to know. Obviously that's helpful when you have a table of contents. Right, so choose your own adventure up until 307, and then we've got some more pre-printed things included. And a little note here from Sidonie. That's a really lovely note. I love this section here. It says, I'd like to add in, please don't feel like you have to fill in everything. You don't even have to enter every book you read or fill in all the spaces. It's all optional, and the tools are here to guide and inspire, no pressure whatsoever. I feel like a lot of us put a lot of pressure on ourselves when it comes to keeping a reading journal or any other kind of journal, so that's so lovely to have just written there in the front of the book. Okay, oh, we've got some illustrations as well throughout, it looks like, so you could color that in if you wanted to. You could have a good time with it. And of course, if you wanted to, you could decorate things with some washi tape stickers around the place just to add a little extra personalization. Welcome to the bookshelf. Consider it your little paper library where you can keep track of your books. You can either write your titles into the spine or color in a book for every novel you finish, or both. It's up to you. Yes, I've included a blank bookshelf page, so you are welcome to draw your own. That's pretty cute. That's very cute. I love a bookshelf tracker. They are nice and big, so you do have room to write the titles into most of those. Some of them are very skinny. These are the blank ones, so you could add your own, or if you have the stamp set, you could stamp them. Okay, reading goals and to-do list. Set your goals, keep track of accomplishments, be your best reading self, but also remember to make it fun. Really enjoying the pressure off reminders throughout. Okay, we've got some pre-printed goals here. So if you aren't sure where to get started, you've got some suggestions. Start using a reading journal. Tick, because you've got it. Visit the library, clean shelves and donate unwanted books. Participate in a reading challenge. Reread an old favorite. Read a book outside my favorite genre. Read a book in public, main character vibes, and finish 5 owned TBRs. You can set yourself a deadline and tick it off once it's done, or if you preferred, instead of a deadline, you could use this column as a date you completed the goal. More on the opposite page. Very nice bright white paper. It's got maybe a touch of a grey undertone, I would say. Upcoming releases. Never again will I miss another book release. Never again will I pre-order the same book twice. To that I solemnly swear. Cute. Places to add upcoming releases. These ones have got a yes or no option on the right page for have you ordered it yet or not. On this side it is, oh okay, so those are for series. Okay, and these are for standalone books, I suppose. Book, author, series. Is this supposed to go all the way across the spread? I'm guessing it does. Book, author, series, release, ordered, yes or no. Very minimalist, but I like that because then you can add your own flair if you want to, or you can leave it minimalist if you want to. More of those. Here we are. Oh, that's such a pretty little decorative page. Next we've got the reading tracker. I do like that there are instructions built in. So if it is your first reading journal, you've got this kind of holding your hand through it as you learn how you like to use it or how you're intended to use it. A wonderful resource to track how much time you spend reading each day, month and year. It's also a fantastic way to hold yourself accountable for reading your books. I'm looking at you, book lover, with too many TBRs. Use the space provided to either tick off the days or record how much time you spend reading. All right. Okay. So it's kind of a matrix year in pixels kind of a situation. Numbers for the days 1 through 31 down the left side, and you've got January through December here. You can mark the year here, so you could use this across multiple years if you were so inclined, and that worked with your reading habits. You could color in simply that you read on the 1st of January, you know, yes or no, read or did not read. You could add a little symbol there if you wanted, instead of using a marker, if you just wanted to use one pen for the whole journal. Or you could add yourself some kind of key at the top to color code and say maybe if you'd like to keep track of how many pages you read and you wanted to make it blue for you read 100 pages, or green if you read 200 pages, you could color it in with the corresponding colors if you preferred that idea. Really flexible, really accessible if you want it to be, really detailed if you want it to be. You've got 3 pages worth of those, so you can cover 3 years there. Then we're into reading challenges. Record and follow your active reading challenges here. Whether the challenge is issued by a website, Bookfluencer, or yourself, challenge yourself with some reading prompts to get out of your comfort zone and discover a new world of reading. Okay, so challenge name by challenge host, start date, end date, list. Pretty straightforward. I could see myself using that for something like my own Bewitched book challenge that I ran in October. 3 pages of those, and then we're on to the to be read, which if you have hovered around my channel before, you will know is a term that I don't love. Personally, I call it maybe next, but most people do call it to be read, so I'm not going to throw stones over here. We all have a tendency to buy things and forget about them. The same happens to your book, and I plead guilty, Your Honor. Just because you push a book to the bottom of the pile or to the back of a shelf doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So be sure to record your TBRs here and mark them off when you read them. Nobody puts baby in a corner. That's cute. The thing for me here is that I don't buy physical books. I'm that freak. I just read everything on ebook or audio, and mostly through the library. So my maybe next list is much less dictated by stuff I have on my shelves that I might want to get off my shelves than it is just this is what I feel like reading next. Hence, I guess why maybe next works really well for me. And it would be simple enough to cover this with some stickers or washi and put your own title there if you wanted to. Of course, if you want to try and match fonts and stuff, you can go that far, or you can just stamp it or something if you would prefer. I think that would be pretty easy. We've got a decent chunk here because Sidoni knows we do be hoarding books. Okay, that gets us up to page 42. Some more cute color in artwork over here, and then we've got quick reviews. Short, sweet, and simple, a place to keep track of all your star ratings and log your books when you don't feel like writing a whole review. all your reading information in one easy place. I tend to review everything I read in kind of the same way, so I don't know if a space for a quick review and then an in-depth review is great for me, but I can understand why people would want that, absolutely. Oh, this is just a list. Okay, so book in this column, author, pages, I guess to keep track of the page count of the book, genre, format, start date, end date, star rating already printed on the page for you so you don't need a little stamp like I have, and reviewed yes or no. Okay, is this not the reviews? Is this just like an overview page? Is that to keep track of whether or not you've reviewed it on Goodreads if you're like an advanced reader copy reviewer, or is this the whole thing? I'm okay with it if it is the whole thing. It's a good way to have all of your data available at a glance. I respect it. I don't know if I'd call it quick reviews though, because the only part of it that's really a review is the rating. That's beautiful. I love this piece of artwork. Next up, reviews and reflections. Time to get serious. I like this font. It's nice. To me, this kind of is a quick review, but I understand why, if the previous was the quick review, that this is the more in-depth version. Star rating right at the top, out of the gate. Then we've got title, author, start and finish dates, genre, format, page count, published date. I like that. I've just recently started adding the publication year to my own journal, not necessarily the whole date. Read count. Is that for rereads, I assume? So if this is the first time you've read the book, you'd write 1. If you've read it before, you could write 2 or 3 or 4 or however many. I like that idea. I'm not someone who really rereads, but I like that idea. Series and book number. Thoughts. Did you enjoy this book? Yes, no, unsure. Still such an efficient way to review. Circle yes, circle no, circle unsure. Would you read this book again? Yes, no, unsure. Would you recommend this to a friend? Yes, no, unsure. This is like book journal review page training wheels. I love it. This is such a great way if you really don't know where to start with a book review. This is an incredible way to do it, even if this just inspires your own for a DIY journal. Like, I love this idea. Some of these are criteria for my book rating system that I came up with, which there's more information on my rating system linked in the description down below. I have a video explaining how it works. What did you like the most? What did you like the least? Trope, so you can keep track of any tropes that you run into down here, which is always fun. Favorite characters. Favorite is spelled with the U here because that is correct in Australia, and the creator of this journal, the designer of this journal, is Australian, so that makes sense. If you are in the US, that is something that you would just have to live with if it did bother you. Oh, separate star ratings here for cover design, writing style, story and plot, and characters. If you wanted to, you could probably use that as some kind of like overarching star rating system to then calculate a 5-star here, or you could just do it all on the vibes. Absolutely no hate to anyone who likes to rate on the vibes. I've done it myself. It is completely valid. Page references. I guess that's for parts that you might want to go back to, or if your friends are reading it that you might want to talk to them about. That's not something I pay a lot of attention to when I'm reading, especially because I do so many books on audio. And notable scenes here, lots of space to use this however you like. So this could be stickers, this could be illustration, this could be just full text writing. You could do dot points in here, you could make this really whatever you want it to be. And we've got a space at the bottom here as well that is not titled, so you could put whatever you like down here. I'd probably put a book cover somewhere because I like them, but you do also have the title and author information over here already, so if you feel like that would be redundant, you don't need to. The journal is not trying to force you to include book covers. Favorite quotes. How did this book make you feel? What did this book teach you? Who was your favorite character and why? And then heaps of space, a whole page over here for a final review for your in-depth thoughts and feelings. And if you're ever not sure what to include in one of those, I recommend just looking up book club discussion questions online and using those to kind of prompt you. You'll read through them and find one that you're like, I have something to say about that for this book. Your final review space actually goes on the front and back of a single leaf, so you've got 2 pages for that. And then we've got notes and similar books, which is an interesting one down here on the other page. And I assume that's it for the book. Yes, so we've got several of those, I would assume. The same pages. We will skip forward a bit here to when things get different. Found my way to the ribbon bookmark, which is a lovely purple. Just the one from what I can tell. So if you're using the book in a linear way, that would be just fine. If you were wanting to mark several pages, you'd probably need to get a separate bookmark and pop that in yourself. Okay, so I guess back at the table of contents back here at the beginning, all of this space here, the choose your own adventure-ness, page 60, page 66. Let's just go back for a sec from the beginning of the reviews. Page 60, 61, 2, 3, 4, 66. Okay, so those are all individual in-depth book review spaces. I was assuming, given that this wasn't designated over here, that this was going to be like blank dot grid paper or something, but these are actually all review spreads, so that's actually great. I was expecting, for some reason, not that. So if you like this format, if you like this setup, you've got plenty to be working with. That's lovely. We're not messing around here. Okay, this is my dream reading setup, a really big cushy lounge, fuzzy slippers, blanket, cup of tea, good to go. If it's raining outside, all the better. Okay, then we've got reading stats towards the back, so that makes chronological sense to me that you would put your stats later. I like to put some of mine at the beginning too, but you know, as long as they're not like in the middle of the book, I'm happy. Unless you were doing a chronological DIY journal and that was where the end of the year fell or whatever, that makes sense. Want to break down your year /S, because it could be more than one, of reading. This is the place you come to enter all the information you recorded and figure out how much of a book obsessed person you really are. You're welcome. I love reading stats. I think they're really fun, so I'm into this. Okay, so it looks like it's a single page and then it's repeated. Space to put, I assume, the year or whatever period it is that you're covering. This could be per month if you wanted to. I do monthly reading stats in my journal, so you'd find no shade from me. Books read, pages read, days read, and there's a slash line there so you can say like 18 out of 30 or whatever it would be. Quickest book read, space to put which book it was and the number of days that took. Slowest book read, space, days. Genre list down the side here, and that's divided almost like a little library card. Isn't that cute? So you can put the genre and how many books of that genre were read. Most read author and the number of books for them. Format, hardback, paperback, Kindle/e-reader. Like that e-reader is recognized there because sometimes people forget that Kindle's not the only one. I'm a Kindle user, but Kobo people, etc. I see you. Audiobook and other. Then we've got diversity. That's a cool addition. We've got female authors, male authors, BIPOC authors, and LGBTQI+ authors, and an extra space for whatever other diversity category you might like to add. Shortest book, number of pages. Longest book, number of pages. Star rating breakdown over here. So you can add how many books you read in whatever period you have defined that were 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, 5-star reads. Volumes, how many are a standalone book, a duology, or a series? That's not something that I have come up in my auto stats. I use Storygraph to track my reading, which is an app, and I love it, but I don't think it tells me that. Maybe that's part of the paid version. I don't pay for it. And then we have the completed section. How many goals or to-do list items did you complete with regard to your reading? Remember we had the reading goals section back at the start. How many books from your TBR did you complete? How many recommendations did you complete? And how many challenges? So we've got reading statistics for 3 pages here. If you wanted to do it monthly, clearly that's not going to be quite enough. I would need a stack of those because you've got 3. But if you're going to do it per year or every 6 months, then that would work just fine. Just going to stick a washi under here so it balances the book a little better. It does lay flat, which is lovely. Book awards should be really fun. That's not something I do in my own journal, but I love this idea. Maybe I should. Best book. In first place, space to write the book title. Second and third, not a huge amount of space there, but if you were just putting the title of the book, I think it would probably be okay. Favorite characters, and second place and third place for your favorite characters as well. Which book made you cry the most? Which book made you laugh the most? Which book made you the happiest? Which made you the most angry? Which did you learn the most from? Space to add a memorable quote, and then the best series, duology, and standalone. Most disappointing read and most challenging read. Really interesting categories. I'm curious to see how many of these we have. Oh no, hang on. For some reason my brain assumed this was the same thing, but it's not. This is different. This is your least favorite thing. So least favorite books, first, second, and third place. Brutal, but I love it. I live for it. Least favorite characters, first, second, and third place. Space for more information that you can choose as you like, I suppose. I feel like this could be fun if you're like someone who hates the miscommunication trope. You could put like worst offender of miscommunication trope and write which book it was there, or like other such tropes. I'm a pregnancy trope hater, so I could put that there. I really don't have many ideas for how I would use the rest of this page, but if you have them, I'd love to hear what you think. 2, 3. All right, and then we're into the next section. Favorite quotes. Just lined pages here for you to add your favorite quotes in here in your own favorite way. If you like to illustrate, if you like to letter, you could have a lot of fun with this, or you can just write them straight on there. If you have a thermal printer or a home inkjet printer or whatever, you could do them in nice fonts and stick them in. Lots of room for those ones. And then we're onto the library card. Never forget who borrowed your favorite book ever again. Love this idea. Once again, I don't keep physical books really, so I don't have a use for this kind of thing, but if you have a big library and you're lending your books out to people, love that you can keep track of where they are, who has them, when you lent them to them, so you know how long they've had your favorite book and whether or not they've been returned. Although, this is a yes/no, so I assume if you tick no and then they return it, you just have to be okay with both of them being coloured in, which is fine, I suppose. 3 pages for those ones. I guess that's plenty. I suppose we're not all lending out 700 books at a time. Recommendations. The days of deep diving through your phone notes is over. Keep all your recommendations in one place so you never forget a recommendation again. So this is what my maybe next is in my own journal. I call it that because I don't have a physical TBR. Book recommendations. Title, recommended by, read yes or no. Very straightforward. Not a huge amount of space there for, like, if someone's recommending me a book, I kind of want to know the author's name as well. I feel like that's helpful to know. And there's not a stack of room for writing, like if, I always use The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent as an example, because that's a long title, you're gonna run out of room. And then you're gonna have to use 2 or write really small or abbreviate the title, just things to note. I don't hate it, I think it's a good idea, but I'm not completely sold on the execution here. And then we've got the blank space. You're free. Okay, and then we've got the dot grid paper. Now this is something about the Quirky Cup Collective journals that is not my favorite thing because I'm a snob, okay? So if you don't care especially about dot grid paper, this will not apply to you. You'll just be like, whatever, Erin, it's paper, don't be so serious. But I prefer a much smaller dot than this. These dots are massive. They're more like spots than dots in my little opinion. And the spacing is not what I'm used to either. Let me grab a ruler real quick. I'm in Australia, so I use the metric system and, oh, no, not quite. I thought for a second maybe we were gonna go okay, but the dot grid is not 5mm, or it looks like it's trying to be and it's not quite. It starts out right and then it starts to lose it a little bit. It's not the end of the world to not have your dot grid exactly 5mm spaced apart. You can still use this to create your own layouts. Absolutely, it's not that serious, but I feel like there is so much going on this page already that anything I add to it, it's just gonna look like a lot, you know? I like my dots to be a lot smaller, a lot subtler. Let me grab my bullet journal to show you what I prefer. Actually, this is my research and development journal, but the cover is super appropriate for when you're talking about a reading journal, so I thought I'd show you. This is from Archer and Olive. They don't make a pre-printed reading journal to my knowledge, but much smaller dots, equally dark, I would say. These ones are a little bit more like blue, whereas these are much more gray, but let me hold them up really close to the camera so you can see what I'm saying. You see the difference, right? The top one is the Quirky Cup Collective reading journal. The bottom one is my blank Archer and Olive dot grid paper. It's just a bit daintier, a bit more delicate. It's what I prefer. And this is my channel, so you're gonna get my honest opinion, whether you like it or not. We've got several dot grid spaces here to the end of the book by the looks of that. Oh, fully blank pages as well, which my brain just assumes is an end sheet, but no, they're numbered. Like, you could use these for whatever. If you want a place to put book covers, if you like the idea of putting together an artistic spread for a favorite book, you've got places to do that. Of course, back here with the dot grid ones as well, but also fully blank pages if you're not into the dot grid. And then we have, yep, end sheets. To be continued, because obviously when you run out of this one, you're not gonna stop reading. You're gonna need somewhere else to truck your reading after this. So that's the walkthrough. The vibes are good. I'm feeling positive. Does this have a... No, it doesn't. The Quirky journals don't have an elastic closure, so if you want to keep it closed while you're out and about, you'll have to put it in a book sleeve, which they do sell, so I guess that makes sense. They're like, buy our book sleeves because we don't give you an elastic closure. And that's fine. The cover is too beautiful to be interrupted, so I respect it. I thought we'd go through and try using the journal a little bit with a few different pens as well, because I care about pens, so maybe you do too if you're here watching this. See how it works in practice, because sometimes that's when you find the quibbles that you weren't expecting, or you find something to be a joy that you hadn't considered. In order to complete this experiment, I am calling on data from my 2 completed reading journals from 2024. I have stacks of videos about these 2 journals on my channel, so make sure that you check out my reading journal playlist if you're keen to find out more. First of all, let's just put my name in it. I'd love to do it in purple to match the cover, but I don't actually have a really nice small purple brush pen, so I'm gonna go with grey instead. Nice. Didn't bleed. That's an end sheet though, so I don't know that that's particularly a an accurate representation. We're gonna start out with the bookshelf. And I did have a bookshelf tracker in the second one of my journals. I didn't keep one in the first one. Looks like this, and I did actually set this up with the Quirky Cup Collective reading journal stamp set. So that's why the books on these shelves look the same as the books on these shelves. It's because they are. When I set this one up, I did the books I read in a month in a particular color that matched the kind of theme that went later on. So I guess we'll bring that across. I have a bunch of pink pens on my desk at the moment, so I'm just gonna color a bunch of them in pink, and then we'll letter some book titles in as well. Well, that was a lot of fun. It's certainly a bookshelf Barbie would be proud of. Let's see how the paper's held up. We've got maybe a tiny touch of ghosting over here from the clock, but certainly nothing to complain about. That's really acceptable. These are just water-based markers, mostly Tombow Jewel brush pens, a couple of the Pentel brush sign pens as well, all water-based brush tip markers. And that's held up really well. And I thought we might add a couple of book titles along the spines. Just gonna use September stats from my story graph. Gonna use the Sakura Pigmamicron 01 here, which I'm pretty confident will perform just fine. Mostly because I only just colored these in. I haven't given them a chance to dry down at all. And if you write straight onto that, usually it will bleed a little bit, but the Pigmamicrons hold up really well against that sort of thing. Cool, that seems to be working pretty well. And the paper seems to be holding up nicely too. So let's carry on. Goals and to-do list. I have a book bingo in my journal that I think is pretty similar to this, so let me just grab that out. Here we go. I'm just gonna take some of my reading goals from here and move them onto that one. I'm gonna try the Muji gel pen this time. I mean, there's not much about that could really go wrong. Completely fine. Gel pen, completely fine. I would be very shocked if it wasn't, to be honest. Onward, upcoming releases. That's something I haven't even filled out in my own journal yet, but let's just do one that's really soon. In fact, this book is coming out today, on the day that I am putting this video up, and I am pumped. I'm using Australian date convention there, just FYI. That is correct, the day comes before the month for us. No, I haven't ordered it yet, but I want to. Thanks for reminding me. I'm going to do it as soon as I'm done recording. I have no complaints there. I think that's a good system. I have mine arranged like a calendar, but you can just add them as you know about them here. They don't necessarily have to be in like a chronological release order because you can just write the date and it's all good. So moving on. Reading tracker. I'm going to skip over this one, honestly. This isn't something that I track for myself. I don't especially care. I think I read most days, but I'm not sort of trying to make it a goal to read every day. It's incidentally kind of something that happens on its own, but I'm not interested in tracking that for myself, so we're going to skip over those, but you can envision how you would use those ones for yourself, I'm sure. Reading challenges. Okay, let's pretend that I did this one for my Bewitched book challenge, which was my little October reading challenge. Let's try a fountain pen for this one, because I know is it fountain pen friendly is a big question when it comes to journals lately. Fountain pens are really having a moment, so we need to know this one's a Lamy, and I've got the just Lamy black ink in this one too. Let's see how we go. This started on the 1st of October, ended on the 31st, because it was a Halloween challenge. I used enough of it, I think, to be able to determine that the fountain pen worked really well, actually. Let's just switch to the little Tom Studio Wren, which I struggle to get the lid off in summer. I think it expands a little bit. This one also is loaded up with fountain pen ink, but it's in a little fiber tip, so it doesn't quite have the same saturation as the way the ink flows out of the nib of a fountain pen, but this one is using the Tom Studio black ink. Long title. I have pretty big writing, so I started to kind of take up a little bit too much space there, but there is enough room there. I definitely don't think that that's an inadequate amount of space for adding a book title and author. Oh, we're going to test it with this one too, though. I was much more condensed with the way I wrote it though, I guess. Here we go. I don't have any worries, but let's just check. Yep, the Tom Studio Ren pen hasn't bled through either, which makes me very happy to see. That's pretty cute. I like the book challenges. Carrying on, the TBR. This is really just a lot of writing on paper, so I feel like this one doesn't need to be really in-depthly tested until we get to the reviews maybe, which we're coming up on the quick reviews. Here we are. Gonna have to refer to my Storygraph stats for this one again. Let's just go backwards through the books I finished at the end of the year. Gonna use the gel pen for this one. For the pages section here, this first book I'm adding in, I read on audio, so I'm putting the book length, like 10 hours, 43 minutes, rather than a page count, but that information's pretty accessible anyway if you prefer to add pages, even if it was an audiobook. I feel like I'm doing a terrible job coloring in these stars for the star rating, but it's quite far away from me. Sometimes the way you have to set up to film, you can't really get your head too close or you end up with it in the frame, so I can't totally see what I'm doing. My apologies if my stars look really bad. Okay, having filled out 5 of these now, I don't have any issues with it. There are a couple of things that I personally like to track as well as these things, and of course I think you could add those to the more in-depth reviews over here if you were doing that kind of thing, or you could just work it in your own way. So for me, I like to keep track of which books I got from the library versus which books I spent money on, and you could do that really easily just by something like putting a little L. Did I get any of these from the library? Do you know what? I don't think I actually sourced any of these from the library, but for example, if I had, say I got Gwen and Art Are Not in Love from the library, I could put a little L here. And I got the Yellow Wood from Audible, so I could say there's a little Aud Live, just to make it really like clear. You might want a different one. Say we go Kin for Kindle, whatever it is, you could keep that extra little stat for yourself if you wanted to. I would probably do that. You could put it elsewhere if it made more sense to you to put it right at the end or to stack it onto the book title or the author name, something like that. Functionally, completely fine. Nothing wrong with these spreads. And I do really like that you have all of that information available at a glance. I think that's pretty cool. Let's try a more in-depth review. Yeah, let's do A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. That sounds fun. I loved that book. It has been a couple of months since I read this, so I am going to refer to my notes in my reading journal to work out how I want to answer these questions. I can't think how to answer the trope section for this one, but I think the rest I should be okay with. I definitely don't have any page references for this one. Because I don't do most of my reading with a physical book, I don't know if the cover design affects me quite as much as it would affect other people, but I'm just gonna go with my gut here. I do see a cover and think, ooh, that looks good, but that wasn't why I picked this book, but I don't think the cover's bad at all, so we'll go with that. Writing style, real good. I'm getting really lazy about these stars now. These are really small. You could absolutely color them in more precisely than I am. I'm curious here. If I were to break this down into a rating system all of its own, I would have 4 plus 5 plus 5 plus 4.5, which would give me 18.5 out of 20 times 5, 4.625, which I gave the book 4.5 stars. So that does seem like pretty good translation, I suppose. I really truly don't know what to put down the bottom here, so just for funsies, I'm gonna put some washi tape just to see how it would look if you decided you wanted to decorate your pages just a wee bit, so that if you wanted to have a little bit of the vibes of the book, this is not really the vibes of the book. I do kind of feel like my original reading journal spread summed it up, but that's because I'm deliberately doing this like creative reading journal style. This can be a little creative if you want it to be, is where I'm going with this. What have I got in my sticker book? And I feel like this is a really fun way actually to cover up any sections that you don't really especially want to use. Like, I don't need the page references, so why keep them? Let's make them pretty instead. Same thing down here. I don't really think there's anything I want to put in the trope section, so what trope section? I don't know what you mean. All right, I mean, this is me talking, so is anyone surprised? But I do think that is more fun than it was before. Definitely think this is a fun way to review the book, but it ain't over yet. We got more over here. Favorite quotes. I don't think I wrote any down. I'm just gonna check Goodreads for that. And I'm gonna use a pretty brush marker, because why not? My internet is really slow today, so I'm just gonna go ahead and fill the rest out while I wait. Oh yeah, here's a good quote. I don't know that I want to go back through and do the whole review there, like copy paste, right? I do also think this would be really fun as a decorative page if you didn't want to. Although, yeah, over here, that is plenty of room, the final review. Allow me to consult my sticker book over here, make a little mood board. This is not going to be super accurate to the book because I'm just putting stuff together, but you could make it as accurate to the book or as vibey as you want, of course. She kind of has a house that backs onto some woods, right, where she walks the dog, so do a little bit of this. Not the most cohesive color scheme I've ever done, but I'm just trying to illustrate a point here. Okay, and I've covered up the similar books part over here too. I'm alright with that. Let's just pretend that I've filled in a final review here. I do feel like this was a fun way to review the book. And if you had a book club that you were discussing the book with, then you could absolutely include your book club discussion questions in the final review section there as well. I like it. I like the book review system. Let's carry on forward to the stats bit of the book. I'll probably fill this out in a bit of a hodgy-podgy kind of way because my reading stats are kind of all over the place. We'll do 2024, 96 books read. I don't know how many days out of the year I read. I'm okay with that, that's fine. Not a huge amount of space there. I guess if you just wanted to write the book title, you could. I don't generally like to write a book title without the author because sometimes it's not clear to other people what I'm talking about. I'm just gonna leave both of these blank because I don't know and I couldn't be bothered working it out. And for this one, I didn't really do this. I didn't have goals and stuff for the year, so I'm just gonna leave that. I mean, I guess I completed 2 challenges because I did the Goober readathon and I did my own. All right, not fully completed. Some of this stuff, obviously, if you're keeping a tracker, you'll have that information. And also the diversity section, that's not something that I was actively tracking, so I don't have that information easily available to me. I could work it out, but I don't want to in this moment, so I'm gonna skip that. But I think that's a fun reading stats page. I do kind of wish there were more of them so that it didn't have to necessarily be yearly. If you read a lot and you wanted a monthly reading page, that'd be cool. You could always just copy this format over to, where are they? Your dot grid pages though, over here if you wanted to. And then you could add a whole bunch more. Is there anything else? I don't want to do the book awards. Favorite quotes I think is a little redundant, but I do think this would look really cool if you printed them all separately, especially if you have one of those little mini printers. That could be a really fun way to do like a collage-y style favorite quotes thing. I don't have physical books that I loan out, so I don't need to keep those. My book recommendations are my TBR, it's the same kind of thing. And then it's the blank ones. So cool, I think we've really put it through its paces. And I'm thinking quite positively. It's functional, it's not too much pressure for someone who doesn't want to spend a lot of time in a reading journal. You can kind of go as in-depth as you want to. It's also not trying to force you to add book covers to things if you don't have the resources or the willingness or the time to do that. Overall, I'm pretty impressed, and also it's gonna look amazing on your shelf, so. Let's rate this reading journal like we'd rate a book with a star rating out of 5. I'm gonna use a breakdown across these 4 criteria: book cover, internal aesthetic, practicality and function, and enjoyment. The Quirky Cup Collective's notebook covers have always been a huge part of their appeal, and the reading journals are no exception. Obviously this one's just one in a collection of covers and I chose it because I liked it the most, but they are all so beautiful and would look right at home on a shelf of your special edition hardcovers. Even if I am dubious about this lettering, I'm going to give the cover 5 stars. I'm quite torn on how to rate the internal aesthetic. The functional pages are very minimal, which means the journal is relying pretty heavily on its cover for its character, but it also gives you the flexibility to make the pages your own if you want to. The artwork pages are a fun addition if you like colouring in, which isn't a huge deal for me, but I can see why it might appeal to a lot of people. There's not much opportunity to add book covers, which I both love for accessibility and mourn as a highly visual person, but at $59.99 Australian, it's certainly more affordable than Notebook Therapy's $85 Australian reading journal, even after I add $9 to ship it to me, so the price point is a big point in the Quirky Cup Collective's favour. I'm going to hedge my bets on this one and give it 3 stars for internal aesthetic. It's obvious they've taken practicality and function into account at every stage of crafting this journal. The page order makes sense, the instructions are included within the pages, there's flexibility built in, and in most cases you're given plenty of space to use the journal in a way that works for your reading, whether you go through books rapidly or only read a handful in a year. The only drawback for me is the number of stats pages. As someone who relishes the monthly reading stats in my own journal, I'd love to see enough of this page included for a reader to track both monthly stats as well as annual stats for the full year, although of course you can add those yourself to the dotted and blank pages near the back. I'm giving it 4.5 stars for practicality and function. And then there's enjoyment. This one came as a bit of a surprise to me, but I felt like filling out this journal felt a little dry and dull. After such a bold and exciting cover, the ultra-minimalist page aesthetic didn't keep me wanting to fill it out. Obviously, I like to make my own reading journal very dynamic and decorative, so it's entirely possible this is very much a me problem, and others might love the simple page layout. And of course, you can add your own flair with stickers and washi tape if you want to, but I feel like this journal would end up very much a shelf trophy for me and not something I'd genuinely pick up and use after finishing a book. Adding my own decoration definitely helped, and I'm certain this is just me being pedantic, so I'm going to stick to 3 stars for enjoyment. That gives us a total score of 15 out of 20 or 3.87 out of 5, which I'll happily round up to 4 stars. I'd love to know your thoughts. Does this reading journal look like the perfect fit for you? Or did you notice any issues with it that I may have missed? Let me know in the comments below. Please also let me know if there are any other pre-printed reading journals that you'd like to see me review. If DIYing a reading journal sounds like a better fit for you, here's a video I made about how to start one that you'll want to keep up with, and under that is a playlist of all my 2025 reading journal update videos in case you're keen to see how I set mine up.